and welcome to the Hit Back. I'm your host, Nahaja Black. It is a beautiful Thursday here in the 242. I'm enjoying the overcast skies just a bit to the what I'm expecting and looking forward to very much so to be to be a great show. Honestly, I'm looking forward to this to being a great show. Yesterday was an excellent show with the Minister of Public Services and National Insurance. And I think that we will again today find that we are breaking great ground in conversation here in the Bahamas as we are experiencing some critical times, some interesting times, and one that when we look at history and we have social narrators, historians who will tell the story of 2020 from 2019 to 2020 and all that it has encompassed for the Bahamas. And we don't even know what the future holds based on the trajectory of today. So we don't know if tomorrow is going to be better than today. We're hopeful, and I'm a hopeful individual. So we are hopeful, but these times lead to very interesting moments in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Yesterday, a group of attorneys, in particular Wayne Munroe and Associates, the firm, along with some of the nation's premier legal minds, went about issuing a writ through the Supreme Court and with regard or defending the plaintiffs, right? I think they would be called plaintiffs, maybe in this case, yes. From Exuma, who were all arrested and charged with breaking curfew. And it is now an act of, or a question of, was their constitutional rights impeached upon? And they were disenfranchised by powers that went beyond those of the spectrum of the competent authority. Did the Governor General give powers that he was not in his right to give? And we have on the show today, we'll be having as great guests Damien Gomez QC, Wayne Munroe QC, Bjorn Ferguson, attorney at law, as well as coming in soon, Khalil Parker, president of the Bar Association, on the show. And so we're excited to have this great show today. But before we go there, if you guys remember I think it was last week, last week, Wednesday, I had Dame Joan Sawyer on the show. And Dame Joan Sawyer said then what many felt and what I think the Wayne Munroe had expressly said earlier at the very beginning of this process with regard to our constitutional rights being, were our rights as citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas being breached by the Prime Minister, aka the competent authority in this regard. And she said blatantly, straightforward, without any stumbling, that yes, it was an abuse of power and that our constitutional rights have been run amok. She even went as far as saying that we are under house arrest. And she pointed to parts of the Constitution where new laws, something that wasn't illegal before, cannot be deemed illegal now under the emergency orders. And I'm happy to have such a esteemed gentleman on here. But before we do that again, Lord Sumption. Lord Sumption is a gentleman, a justice, a judge, Supreme Court judge, Privy Council judge, British gentleman, who on the BBC and in a conversation in the BBC and online shared his thoughts on this similarly to what they've been going through. And I wanted to share this with all of us so that we can get a sense of just the fact that the dame wasn't crazy and she's not off, because there are other minds as well across the world people dealing with the same thing, legal minds dealing with the same thing. And Lord Sumption has sat on cases here in the Bahamas, and he is a respected figure across the world in this discussion. So let's see if we can get that played right now for you.
The third factor is that the collateral effects of a lockdown are really very serious. This isn't just a public health issue. It's a political issue. It involves weighing the public health factors against other considerations, the education of our children, the prosperity of our society, on which, after all, we depend for our ability to combat any kind of epidemic diseases, and other effects on health, effects, for example, on mental health, on cancer deaths. There is more to life than the avoidance of death. And if the cost of being alive is to suppress everything that is worth it, then my view is that the cost is simply too high. Finally, I think law is a very inefficient way of dealing with a problem like this, because it's a one-size-fits-all solution. The risks associated with COVID-19 are very variable. If you were about to do something that might expose you to infection, there are a lot of questions you might ask. How old am I? What's my state of health? Have I had it already? How important is what I'm proposing to do, to me, to other people? How much contact with other people will be involved? For how long? The problem about law is it only has one answer to these questions. The only efficient way to deal with this is to allow people to make their own risk assessments, and that involves making it voluntary and relying on their own common sense to make these kind of judgments. Now, I think that for a government to treat people as if they were too stupid, selfish, or self-indulgent to act in their own interest is both patronizing and intolerable in a democratic society. It's also factually wrong, as I think we have learned.
All right, so that was the Lord Sumption in his discussion there. So without further ado, let's bring on the esteemed gentleman. And Mr. Parker, I see that you're here, so let's get you on as well. Damien Gomez, QC, Wayne Munroe, QC, Bjorn Ferguson, attorney at law, soon to be QC, I'm sure, and Khalil Parker, president of the bar. I don't remember what all of those mean anyway. So, folks, gentlemen, welcome, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nahaja. Let me just correct one thing quickly.
Please.
That you said that's not factual. All of the plaintiffs are not charged in Exuma.
Okay, my apologies.
We have a plaintiff from New Providence. We have a plaintiff from Andros. We have we have a number of plaintiffs from New Providence, a plaintiff from Andros, and then of course Exuma.
Okay,
and
so
and one from Acklands.
One from Acklands. We had someone displaced in Acklands. Really?
A business person.
Really interesting. Okay, this is going to be very interesting. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for being here. All right, Wayne, I'll let you take the lead on this right here, since it's under your firm that these plaintiffs have been presented. Is that correct? Let me make sure. I don't want to overspeak based on the writ that I saw.
Well, we're the attorneys, which simply means that we're the office where the pleadings will be filed out of and where responses will be delivered. I had the good fortune of putting together and having come along to assist in this a number of talented lawyers, and some are known, some are in the background, but we're simply the firm at which documents will be dropped off. We got in early with the folks from Exuma, but clearly this is a wider problem than people getting charged with breaking the emergency orders. In the case of Acklands, with somebody's restaurant being interfered with. In the case of Potter's Key Dock, with Potter's Key Dock and Awaki being closed and discriminated against. It's a broader issue that impacts all of the Bahamas. And we intend to make an application to make it a representative action, which is a class, which people commonly call a class action suit. So I think it's appropriate that you have not one firm, not one lawyer, but a collective group of lawyers. Because if we're successful, then the result would bind everyone who's included in the class. So should we succeed, everyone can recover. And so the more hands, the lighter the work.
QC Gomez, I'm glad that you're here as well. We've had shows together, and so it's good to have you join me today. When you look at the situation here, and as Wayne mentioned, you know, the more hands make lighter work. And I think that what we're seeing with all of you here, a good representation of powers that be. But before we go any further, folks would say, or ask the question, is this move political in any way? And I wanted to get your response to that. Is this just a political shenanigans, or are we really, as citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, finding ourselves having our constitutional rights being attacked?
The fact that you referenced earlier Dame Joan Sawyer, who is the only Bahamian jurist who has ever been appointed to the Judicial Committee of Her Majesty's Privy Council, is an indication that this is a much more serious issue that transcends politics, though it does have political effects. For my part, I have been deeply concerned that lawyers, particularly litigation lawyers, have been criminalized by regulations purportedly made under the proclamation of emergency. I say criminalized because we have been told that unless we get the permission of the Commissioner of Police, we cannot go to our offices in order to prepare for court or to assist persons who have been arrested by the police. And in addition to that, our staff are not permitted to come to do their work, which is in most cases necessary, because of the 4 guests here, I don't think any of us type. Certainly not at the proficiency level of a secretary. And there are things that you need to do, photocopying documents, that lawyers for economic reasons don't actually do that, because if you actually charged for that service, you'd be charging an awful lot of money for something that's relatively menial. Now, the Constitution speaks to that, because the Constitution requires the courts to be independent, and an independence of the courts is not merely the independence of the judge, but it's the entire foundation upon which he sits that you have to look at. And no judge would be able to exercise his judicial powers without having heard learned counsel speaking on behalf of respective clients. So what has happened is that the government has attacked the separation of powers doctrine, which is completely unaffected by Article 29.
Completely unaffected. So it should not be a part of this process at all.
So that, you know, it should have been plainly obvious to those who are advising the incompetent authority that he simply cannot prevent lawyers from accessing the courts, nor can he impair that, which is the gravest of contempts of court.
Well, the courts, though, let me ask a question here, just on clarity for that, for my audience. Were the courts demanded to be shut based on this law, or
no,
right?
No, it's not. The courts have not been.
They've not been closed based on.
No, they've been functional. Right. I'm not suggesting that they haven't, but as a litigant, how are you going to appear in court if you can't access your counsel?
Gotcha. I understand now.
You can't. I mean, I don't invite strangers to my house, and I can sit at home and attend a Zoom hearing or a WebEx hearing quite effectively. But if I need to take instructions, which requires me to interact with the client, I do that at my office. And I don't know many lawyers who would allow every and anyone to come into their homes. And that certainly is something that is unreasonable to expect.
And so therefore, what you're saying is this is affecting the client-attorney relationship, just in the form of business being done.
And it impacts indirectly the proper independent functioning of the court. Because if the court cannot rely on the properly researched submissions of counsel, that impacts the effectiveness and the functionality of the court. So this is a far more serious issue than just saying that the courts are open.
Bjorn Ferguson, attorney at law, here with us, and noted defense attorney, one of the young stars. I'm expecting him soon to run out and become a QC as well, maybe probably in a few weeks. But Mr. Ferguson, let me ask you this here. As a young man who has definitely found yourself, well, not found yourself, but it has been vocal on the rights of our citizens, defendants, etc. Your vantage point of this lockdown or this period of executive orders has, in your opinion, the competent authority who has been tagged and dubbed many things during this period, has the arrests of the coconut vendors, has the arrest of the young man or woman, saying that they're going to somebody's house here or there during lockdowns, has, in your opinion, all of these matters been unconstitutional, or are they just in some instances and not just in others?
Well, the whole issue is we determined that they have all been unconstitutional.
The entire orders process is unconstitutional at this point, the way it's been executed, or?
Absolutely, that is the one of the thrusts of our submission, is that the entire exercise has been unconstitutional. I think firstly we need to determine some very practical things. Was there a state of emergency when the first proclamation was issued?
So that's a good say. What now?
Case. Was there a state of emergency when you had one confirmed case?
I never thought of that. To
lock down an entire country, citizenry? Was there, in fact, a state of emergency? So there are issues that the court must determine, because our all our rights have been, infringed or abrogated as a result of the use of Article 29. And it's a very restrictive provision. It's a very restrictive article, and it can't be taken lightly.
Yeah. Wayne, let me ask you this. If we're looking at it from that point of view, I mean, I never even asked the question, was that deemed a state of emergency at the time? Because we could have asked other questions with pertaining to Dorian. I think, did we ever declare a state of emergency during Dorian?
No.
Did we?
No.
We never did, right?
No, but even during Dorian, what would have been the state of emergency? The state of emergency is like a nuclear option.
Right.
You're not saying that things aren't bad. You're saying things are so bad that it requires the suspension of the majority of your fundamental rights, the ability to infringe them. And so in our view, the constitutional jurisprudence must be that is something more than you're having a very serious or bad day. And so to Bjorn's point, you have two cases. You've never had any cases, say, in Acklands. Was there ever a state of emergency in Acklands for them to have all of their rights abrogated? Or for that matter, before the Mexicans went to Abaco and the cases showed up in Abaco, was there any state of emergency in Abaco? What is the projected state of emergency now, even in New Providence? You have 900 current cases, but 30 people in hospital. That's like 3 to 4% hospitalization. And some of those persons in hospital were diagnosed when they were in hospital for other reasons. What is the state of emergency? Just having a public health crisis doesn't create a state of emergency. Each article of the Constitution permits you to individually abrogate it for public health reasons without the need to suspend wholesale rights. And so the fact that you have people opining that the prime minister is a maximum ruler, would tell you what you're dealing with. And, you know, if you like maximum rulers, that is fine. If you like dictatorships, that is fine. But that is not our way. Unfortunately, liberal democracies like ours have adopted a remedy from a communist totalitarian state, China, because this approach that we're adopting was fashioned in China. And who would have thought that the Chinese could impose their political system on the entire West without firing one bullet?
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We have the attorneys, a few of the attorneys who are who have presented their petition to the Supreme Court to challenge the rights of the competent authority and the Attorney General with regard to these executive orders. I have to ask this question before we take a break. No, let's take a break, because I want to ask, is there any part of this process where it is understood, where, because the world is saying, oh, you know, across the world, many are doing similar, right? So we've been told that this is a season when we must force lockdowns. We must enforce them. And you see the challenges of the United States with governors not enforcing lockdowns. And those that did enforce lockdowns are still having their challenges with with COVID-19. Is there any sound reason where we should comply with these orders without fear of losing our rights? Well, I'll ask that coming up on the other side of the break. But let's take the break. I see we have Wallace Rolle, Attorney Wallace Rolle, joining us as well. When we come back, we'll discuss more to see, is there any part of this this process where the Prime Minister was just? I want to know. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We'll be back right after this.
Thinks her business is ready for the hurricane season. What's missing? Insurance. She gives her Massey United insurance rep a call to go through her policy. Okay, now she knows her deductible and has updated her policy. She's ready. Be Massey United Insurance ready this hurricane season. Call RMS Insurance Agents and Brokers at 698-7233. Shield Insurance Agents and Brokers at 356-7202 or Freeport.
In consultation with the Ministry of Health, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas has requested that Bahamians wear cloth face masks outside their homes. Such masks can be utilized in places such as grocery stores and pharmacies. These masks can function to reduce the transfer of respiratory droplets by the wearer. While cloth masks offer some protection, you are more protected if you follow the recommended preventative measures in addition to wearing the cloth mask. These measures include staying at home, practicing physical distancing at least 6 feet apart from others, washing your hands often for at least 20 seconds, and not touching your face. Our healthcare providers need personal protective equipment while caring for patients. It is important to allow them to have the resources they need to function properly. If the public use cloth face masks, this reduces the chance of having a shortage of medical masks for the healthcare workers. Masks should be used safely and properly. Let us protect ourselves and each other.
This message brought to you by Bahamas Ministry of Health in conjunction with Guardian Radio.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM.
We're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black. We've got a strong lineup of guests here on the show today. We're talking about what news was broken. So the big news yesterday, coming to the tail end of the show, if you by any chance, if you're missing any part of the show, if you missed yesterday's show with the Minister of Public Services and National Insurance, you can go to our YouTube page. You can subscribe, share as much as you like, and let's stay informed so you'd never miss a show. But today, the big news during that show, right before I came on air, was that we had a suit, a constitutional, what Wayne Munroe said, which I think best helps us understand, a class action suit. And gentlemen, feel free to unmute yourself when the time comes. That the big news was that there was a class action suit and against the competent authority, and we are going to see how that all plays out. There were a list of defendants. The Attorney General and the Prime Minister, the competent authority, were being charged in this matter, or they are they're the plaintiffs, not the plaintiffs. What is it called? Plaintiffs? Am I right on that? Close? Yeah, maybe. Come on, guys, help me with my legal terms.
Yeah. They're called the plaintiffs. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Someone save a sister when she's drowning, eh? New into the group, of course, is attorney of Wallace, Rolle, and Khalil Parker. Khalil, I'm glad that you're here as well, as you represent the bar and the attorneys associated with the bar. The Bahamas
Bar Association.
Thank you. The Bar Association here. I think you guys, and you issued an interesting letter, which I want to get to at some point in the show, talking about appointments, legal appointments. I think that is very fascinating for a lot of us who don't understand that process, how the Bar Association views these appointments by the Prime Minister, and it is beyond politics. It's just the letters of the law. But let's talk about this lockdown. People argue, folks, and Khalil, you can start off with this. People argue that the Prime Minister is doing what he must do to save us all from this virus, and that we are just too ungrateful, that folks should die because we're too stupid, and we keep fighting against this, and that, suits like this, what I've heard so far, are just being, we are all being just, unruly citizens. We are fighting against something that is in our best interest. What do you say to that?
Well, I won't speak to that narrative directly. I'll leave that to the others. But broadly speaking, I want to unpack something you said earlier about, and I guess it's in this vein with respect to giving people the benefit of the doubt broadly, that there is something going on. You would see that this suit has come when it has come. These questions were alive from day one. And in my capacity, and the reason why I encourage my colleagues in this effort, is that it is good that these questions be put, that the government explain itself, that we unpack some of the assertions that are being presented to us. They're not foregone conclusions. You played the clip of an eminent legal mind who posed very cogent questions. And one of the things he said that wasn't played was that while liberty is not an absolute, it is a very, very fundamental premise upon which we assess executive action. And for my part, we cannot take for granted that what is represented is substantively the case. And flowing from recent utterances from Parliament, where you had statements made that there may come a time where the government does unconstitutional or discriminatory things against the population, its population, and then you have to determine how much you're prepared to sacrifice on the altar of public health. I think that we take it seriously. None of us take that for granted. COVID-19 is real. We are not COVID-19 deniers. That is not the point of this. But it is incumbent upon us as a bar and as practitioners to make sure that the liberty of our fellow citizens is not abrogated or undermined or interfered with arbitrarily. So it cannot be offensive to put that to the test. I reject the premise that we are somehow contrarian to encourage the questions to be asked and answered. So in that regard, that's how I would address that as a broad issue. I think it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we demonstrate that we are watching and that we are concerned about these questions.
You know, I wanted to ask, and anyone can answer this for me. When did any of you think that it was the first time you said, hold on, we've gone too far? We've crossed the line. Damien, I'll go with Wayne first. Wayne, when did you think that it was your first indication that we went too far, that the competent authority, or even before this case, was there a point where you felt as if constitutional rights were breached?
March 17th.
First, right off the bat.
Firstly, when you saw how the proclamation of emergency, state of emergency, which is constitutionally supposed to be public, was actually made at a time that none of us knew. And the governing party gave us a taste of what their attitude would be. They got upset, or they said that the opposition party disclosed to us the state of emergency, which they were told in confidence when they were setting up the resolution to extend it. Now, how in the world could you create a state of emergency that could lead to the suspension of all of our rights and do that in secret? For myself, at a time where there were it was either 1 or 2 confirmed cases, from that day, I was of the view, what is the emergency? You say that people may become ill. There was a track record that showed what percentage of persons who became ill would be hospitalized, a very small percentage. And you say that you need to have the healthcare system catch up. I would have never thought that instead of, for instance, spending $10 million to catch up the health system, you were going to put probably at this point $100 million blow on the economy. If you have lost government revenues, businesses being affected for want of, you will not duck this virus. You have a problem with healthcare facilities. And you know the crazy thing? Look at the UK and the US and even China. They built extra facilities, so they converted convention centers that they never used in the end. Mm-hmm. So that said to me, why, and I say it for the US as well, because their system is triggered by their governors, who in some instances, you give a politician the ability to be God. And it's not surprising that many of them are taking it up. And the countries that didn't take it up aren't having any worse a time now than the ones who did. So from March 17, I was alarmed. I did not act at that point, and I made it clear, because I imagined that you could have civil unrest if something came about the wrong way. And I wouldn't have thought that was a responsible thing to do. And in my mind, since you could be compensated in damages, money, let's see what they would do. And they just got worse and worse and worse. To now, Wallace tells me he was stopped and told when he's exercising, he has to be able to see his house.
Yes, and that's a new one. I mean,
and
when did that become the rule?
Well, stop and think about it. Let's say everyone in Coconut Grove decided to exercise. You'll create a bungle on the street, eh?
Yep.
And I thought bungles were against what was happening. But when you have somebody not saying these places are dangerous, I will close them, but say, I'm going to close everything except. And everything except, even things where you can have a possible chance of spread. The poor auto mechanic who have a yard full of cars and he could happily go and spend his whole day without seeing a human being, his business is closed. Simply because you say you have the power and you are going to tell or treat people like their children, and you're going to close everything without any sort of rhyme or reason. I saw the problem from March 17. It was overreach in my view from the beginning.
Well, what would be posited here, and I got a document and I'll share it with you guys on the next break so we can discuss it at the 5 o'clock mark. But what can be, what has been presented as an argument and not a legal one, this is just the feelings of the politicals, I think, or, you know, the necessary ones, is that, listen, we Bahamians, when you gave us liberty, which was a dumb policy, sorry, I was trying not to say anything untoward and let y'all do it. But we Bahamians, when given the opportunity to travel, went to hotspots and brought the virus home, causing a calamity. Hence the need for these draconian measures of a lockdown once again. And I pivot away. I get very angry at that argument personally, because we aren't children. But yet the argument is the health facilities they would be overrun. And so we must comply, because otherwise, if there weren't laws that infringed on our rights, because don't forget the Prime Minister pontificated that at some point there will be a government that will have to go against the Constitution to protect us, in essence. So was he at any point in this process, because this is where I'm at, some Bahamian people are saying here, Damien Gomez, that we need to be held in line because the mass majority of us are rude.
I do not agree with that. I have a fundamental distaste for that sort of arrogance that is displayed by those who make that argument. My ancestors came to the Bahamas to escape slavery. I don't intend to be that member of my family to agree to be taken back to where we came from. That's the first thing. Secondly, the power that they are relying on in Article 29 is, quite frankly, restrictive, because quite apart from the point that Bjorn made earlier, that there's no evidence of, and I think Wayne as well, that there's no evidence of an actual emergency predating the declaration of emergency. The regulations themselves must pass the tests set out in Article 29, Subarticle 2. And if you look at that article, it says that nothing contained in or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of Article 19, any provision of Article 20, save paragraph 4 thereof, or any provision of Articles 21 to 26, inclusive of this Constitution. And these are the important words. To the extent that the law in question makes in relation to any period to which this article applies provision, or authorizes the doing during any such period of anything which is, and these are the words, reasonably justifiable in the circumstances of any situation, or existing during that period for the purpose of dealing with that situation. Now, that is very, very restrictive, because firstly, the law itself or the regulation itself must be shown objectively to be justifiable. So for instance, a regulation that prevents me from exercising in my yard but outside my house, how is that reasonably justifiable? What purpose does it advance? It can't be, if I'm by myself, the spread of the disease.
Right.
And if you have confined the declaration to a pandemic, how is that furthering your defense of the Bahamas against that pandemic? Likewise, we were told that wearing masks minimized the chance of infection.
Yes.
We were told that if you washed your hands regularly and you didn't touch your face, that those two acts or those two things assist in reducing the risk of catching the disease.
Mhm.
Well, if that is the case, and people started wearing masks, people started carrying hand sanitizers, which they used regularly.
Yes.
And the infection rate had in fact slowed
Mhm.
and come to a point where we didn't see any cases in New Providence or indeed in Grand Bahama. And persons had adjusted their behavior in terms of wearing masks and practicing this heightened hygiene. Why then is it necessary to go further than requiring people to wear masks?
Because now we have a spike, and now we need to control it again.
We
You
have,
see? And
no,
see,
no,
that's the
no,
argument.
no,
Mhm.
we
No, but
have a
now,
spike.
if I might, now let's be blunt about this,
Mhm.
because Damien's style and my style is a lot different, right? I'm short and to the point in court, and Damien and Khalil are a little bit more eloquent than me. You talk about people traveling to a hot spot. Well, you're the idiot who let them travel to the hot spot. You're the idiot who didn't require them to take tests before they came back home. You're the idiot that didn't quarantine them. Isn't it amazing that if you are saying, because you could do all of this by ordinary legislation, if you are saying that we have a problem with you going to the US, but we're not going to restrict you going to the US because that should be your choice. What got up in your head to say that you could go to a hotspot and come back without a test? And if you came back without a test, you wouldn't need to be quarantined. If in fact, the spread is from 72-hour day trippers, weekend trippers to the UK, to the US, how exactly is that these people's problem? If they were told you had to have a negative test to come back, they would have gotten it. They have some instant tests now. If they couldn't get it, they were told if you want to go for 3 days, you would have to quarantine for 14. If I wanted to do my 3-day Miami thing, I know that when I came back home, I'd be quarantined, real quarantine for 14 days. So don't play God and then play foolish. It was their decision. And in fact, this is going to be part of the orders that are challenged. That the very making of that order speaks. You say you are trying to, by these orders, control the spread. You then keep my business closed, restrict my liberty, but permit people to go and come without any sort of testing, any sort of quarantine. I look forward to the doctor who gave that advice coming on the stand in this action and explaining that to us all. So, you know, I don't have any patience for foolishness. I especially don't have any patience for people who are supposedly managing our liberties in their hands and giving very silly, silly justifications. You cannot tell me, and I accept that any disease can kill you. Flu kills, I think, about 1 million people a year. Hypertension, diabetes kills a lot of people. But don't come tell me something is dangerous. And when I get diagnosed, when I get tested and confirmed that I'm infected, you're going to send me home with over-the-counter medications?
So it can't be that dangerous then.
And then only 3% of us who you choose to test, because you're not testing a lot of us, only 3% of us are ever going to require to darken the doors of the hospital. And of that 3%, some of them were discovered on the wards. So don't come telling me this and then threatening me with death. I'm going to die one day. All of us will die one day. I don't have a big issue with length of life. I have a big issue with quality of life. And a part of my quality of life is not having to listen and have imposed on me foolishness. As Lord Sumption says, if I were a sickly 70, 75-year-old, I will have to make a decision. Do I want to risk going to church? I might like church. I might be willing to risk my life to go to church. That ought to be my choice. We do not yet live in a totalitarian state, although they're trying to make it so. Decisions about my life are supposed to be taken by me. And guess what? If you're afraid of being infected so much, why don't you go and voluntarily lock down? That's something you can do.
Let me ask you something here. People are being arrested, right? People are being arrested. I know that, well, we know that for a fact, right? We know that people are being brought before the courts. Freedom to worship has been a very big concern here, right? Pastors in particular, I'm thinking of Pastor T.G. Morrison, who during this process of being locked down, he stood firm on this position, even with pushback, even with myself saying, hey, listen, but we can still do services virtually. You can still have a service in the way that can help to mitigate the spread of this virus. As time has worn on and learning more and more about the virus, you're realizing, okay, at some point we are not going to move away from this. This is not leaving us. We must adjust. And you can't keep locking down the country. You can't keep shutting down businesses. You're killing the economy for something that will stay. With the idea of church, and Wallace, I would like for you to chime in on this one, so we can hear your voice on the show. With the ideas of churches and services, if a pastor wanted to go to his church right now and have his praise team, say go to church. They want to go to church, and I think church services have some sort of policy with a few people can go and whatnot. What should we do as citizenry? If I wanted to go to church with my pastor TG, I'd be breaking the law. But what rights do I have other than I know if I go to court, the magistrate court, am I going to get bail right away? No. So I'm limited in all of my rights here. Correct?
Well, interesting question. I had a wonderful time with Zion and Pastor Morrison a few weeks ago. And I believe it's a right to worship. And we have to decide what we're going to believe. I think a lot of us are afraid. We are cowards. We are cowardly in what we believe in. If you believe in what you're doing, it shouldn't matter whether you get bail right away or no bail at all. So when I said that I was going to go to Zion that morning, and I went and I said, I told my daughter and my wife that, hey, it's a good possibility that I might not be back, but I believe in God so much that I'm prepared to take. I'm locked down anyhow. Locked down in my house or locked down in the cell wouldn't have made much of a difference to me.
Really? No, man. Your house has more creature comforts, Wallace.
Well, it's to
and hopefully less creatures.
Most of us are in cells in our minds. We are in cages in our minds. And when I'm here and I can't leave when I want to and come back when I want to, I'm in a cage.
So, I mean, at this point, because this is where I think a lot of people are, because I look at businesses, right, where people are struggling every day. Businesses are struggling. And I look at some of the orders, and it seems as if the competent authority just, I don't know if he changes his mind, but he creates an exceptions list that to me is very, it seems like a very powerful thing. Khalil, go ahead.
You're talking about the picking of winners and losers.
Yes.
That is problematic. And to pick up on something that Mr. Gomez said in the beginning with respect to the fact that lawyers have throughout this process not been treated as essential, which is a matter of fact. Yes. And so when you condescend to the actual regulations and the particulars of the decisions they made, when you all of that needs to be unpacked because it has a real impact on people's lives and livelihoods as to who is allowed to remain open, who is allowed to remain closed, and what is the basis for this. And when you are talking about picking winners and losers, should we even be in this territory? Should we even be in this particular business in terms of how we apportion success and failure in our economy? And so I think that there are broad issues raised by the state of emergency, and more importantly, by the continuation thereof. We are how many months since the initial impact of this. And we are not seeing, this is one of the things, like I'm here to talk about the fact that the discussion, Wayne alluded to the fact that there's ability to navigate public health concerns under ordinary legislation. Are we still in the territory where we need to be governed by a competent authority, where we need to be governed by fiat, where there are committees going around the country making policy decisions, it seems? You know, is cabinet functioning? Should cabinet ministers be heading these committees? How is the government organizing itself and functioning in this protracted state of emergency? And have they demonstrated not only a preparedness, but an appetite to end this? And that is why I say, when you hear somebody suggesting that at some point in the future, I don't go as far as you, Nahaja, to suggest that he means some government in the future. I have to, for my part, assume that he means this government at some point in the future. I mean, and the reality is, a line has to be drawn. A line has to be drawn, because COVID-19 may be with us and is likely to be with us for a considerable amount of time. The government has to demonstrate the preparedness and the ability to navigate this public health situation in the ordinary parliamentary structure, in our ordinary constitutional arrangement. We are far too far along in this process to not be seeing the attempts in other regions. My colleagues at other bars are showing legislation where the governments are trying to demonstrate how they're going to move from state of emergency to ordinary constitutional arrangements. And it is, for my part, important that we demonstrate that we will not let this drag on without comment and without challenge.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with the attorneys. The next question will be, how strong do we think this case is? And also, an interesting court case that has been presented, and I got it just sent to my phone, and I sent it to a few of you gentlemen on yours, that is being said to be a rebuttal going around around the atmosphere of the Bahamas, the legal stratosphere, about how this class action will be rebutted. And then the next question will be, where is the Attorney General? What is his role in this? Do you believe that the Attorney General has lived up to his mandate to protect the Constitution, or has he failed miserably in your eyes, considering that he is one of those persons presented in the class action? I think I have an idea of what you're thinking. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Damien Gomez, Wayne Munroe, Bjorn Ferguson, Khalil Parker, and Wallace Rolle join us, and we'll be back right after this.
It's Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
You're listening to the Guardian News Network. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Taylor Ferguson. Here's what's making news. Thank you for tuning in. The Office of the Prime Minister accusing opposition leader Philip Davis of attacking government during the crisis for his narrow self-interest. Responding to a statement released by Davis Wednesday, the Office of the Prime Minister labeled the PLP leader's comments as mostly fiction. If thousands of people remain out of work over the next few months, the National Insurance Board won't be able to sustain paying unemployment benefits. That's according to National Insurance Minister Rolle. He says if nothing changes, NIB can only afford to continue paying out unemployment benefits until mid-September.
We have to raise this money. We have until September, and 200 million would have been spent or burned in that exercise. If the thousands of individuals don't get work or don't return to work, there will be issues. Yes, there will be issues. NIB is in a good space. They have funding, but this could not be sustained. You're talking about over $100 million in 4 months.
Attorney in Queen's Counsel Wayne Munroe speaking out on that writ, which was filed yesterday against the Prime Minister and Attorney General, claiming the state of emergency and the emergency orders are unconstitutional.
The first ones are the state of emergency. A state of emergency, as determined by Article 29, didn't exist either in March or when declared again. I believe it was June.
Yesterday's announcement sparked widespread reaction from the public.
but ended with the White House be a deal until the fall. I'm Ed Donahue.
Tired of banks forcing you to use technology to bank the way they want you to? Your convenience is important. So no matter what your banking needs, Commonwealth Bank's friendly staff are always available in branch for that personal one-on-one service. But when you choose technology, our online and mobile banking app offers you state-of-the-art functionality. The choice is yours. Commonwealth Bank. Bank the way you want.
COVID-19, job loss, business closing, family pressures. Men face these and many more challenges. Many have tough decisions to make. They are at a crossroad and need answers. The Gender and Family Affairs Department of the Ministry of Social Services will host a crucial webinar on the theme, Men at a Crossroad. Let's have a conversation from Thursday, August 13th at 2 p.m. to Friday, August 14th on Z Live. Panelists will be led by the Honorable Frankie Campbell, Minister of Social Services and Urban Development. Come one, come all. Let's have a conversation about our men at a crossroad. Let's have that conversation on Z Live, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. this Thursday and Friday.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
And we're back. You're listening to the Hit Back with Nahaja Black, Wayne Munroe, QC, Damien Gomez, QC, Bjorn Ferguson, attorney at law, Wallace Rolle, attorney at law, Khalil Parker, president of the Bar Association. Okay, so I've got a lot of text messages, and we'll start receiving calls. If you want to call, feel free to give us a call here at Guardian 96.9 FM. We are also streaming live on YouTube. You can go right ahead, type in Nahaja Black. You'll find the challenge there. Channel, sorry, you can tell I'm in a legal show today, challenge. You can find the channel there, and feel free to ask as many questions that you have so that we can get them on the show. Okay. So, and I see that we may have lost Khalil, and he'll be back shortly there because I got a few questions for him as well. All right, Jen. So here is something that I sent to your devices. I think Wallace, you're the only one I was unable to send it to, but I got it also on air, and I'm told that this is one of the cases, and it's called the Dolan Summary. R. Dolan and others versus the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care and others. This was a decision made in the High Court. And it is a judgment concerning a claim by 3 claimants who sought permission to challenge the restrictions imposed to combat the corona pandemic. The first claimant is the United Kingdom, a UK citizen born in the UK, but currently lives in Monaco. He owns businesses in the UK and has family here. The second claimant is a UK citizen resident in England. She's a Roman Catholic and has been unable to attend Mass during the lockdown as places of worship have been closed for communal worship. The third claimant is a pupil at school. So there's been this, this was presented here, and not presented here, but presented in the UK. And I wondered if you guys, have you seen it? Have you heard it? Are you familiar with this case?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, give me a little bit of background on it, and why does the those who are opposing your position feel as if this is a viable argument?
Well, let me say this. I'll just read paragraph 6, and it would explain why they shouldn't see it as a viable argument. In paragraph 6, the concluding paragraph, it says the court had already concluded that it was arguable that the restriction on the use of a mosque for communal prayer was an interference with the freedom of religion guaranteed by Article 9 of the Convention. That issue was therefore to be subject to a full hearing to determine if any interference was justified. While it was similarly argued that a restriction on communal worship in Roman Catholic Church may involve an unjustifiable interference with freedom of religion, that issue may have become academic in light of amendments. So what this is saying is you have a judicial review process in the UK. Our case is not one for judicial review. The UK regulation is one thing. our Emergency Powers Act, Section 3, does not permit emergency powers regulations for public health matters.
Does
and
not.
So does not. Public health is not, and it's online for every Bahamian to read. Section 3 does not permit the Governor General to make regulations for public health. It's just missing there altogether. And the fact they could go ahead, and it's a simple concept. Parliament delegates authority to somebody to make a rule. So I can say, Naja, you can go and collect all my rent. You can't sell my house though.
Right.
And on our analogy, they go on and they sell the house.
Wow.
Because Parliament did not say that the Governor General can make any provisions with regard to public health. The laws in the UK clearly are different because you have to show that the interference was not justifiable. Damien has read Article 29, and the person interfering with our rights has to show that it is justified. And even in this case, the issue of whether there was any justification for interfering with those rights in COVID, in people meeting in mosque and communal worship was something that was set for hearing. So they didn't even find that there was any basis to interfere with religion at all. They say you have to look at whether there is any basis for interfering with it. So I've seen this circulated as the JR proceedings were dismissed. That might have technically happened, but it would appear that the convention case was advanced. And a convention case is basically a constitutional case. And we have a constitutional case. We do not have a JR case.
Do you believe that, how soon? Okay, so now that we put this, go ahead, Damien.
In addition to that, in this case, in Dolan, no issue of the separation of powers arose at all.
No issue of it.
No, that was not even, well, it wasn't argued. It was a judicial review case. We are saying that the wholesale approach of the government has run afoul of the separation of powers doctrine and infringes Article 1 of the Constitution.
And Article 1 is?
It says that the Bahamas shall be a democratic state. The fact that you are interfering with lawyers in their appearances before the courts is an indication that you are undemocratic. You're depriving the public of the proper use of the Supreme Court.
Let me ask you this question, Bjorn Ferguson, attorney at law. You're a young man who's definitely in touch with the masses. Which way do Bahamians feel this? Bahamian businesses feel this the most? Like, well, how are we feeling this in a sense that the non-attorney, a Bahamian can understand in words to say, hey, my rights are being infringed upon? Because I think a lot of us still do believe that we have to give up our rights in order to be safe. So how would you convey this to the general public? And you're on mute, so unmute yourself there for me. Let's see what you got. There you go.
In a very practical kind of way, we could just follow data from Central Bank. Central Bank indicates how our people deal with finances, very practically. And so when you have people who basically live day to day, and they're prohibited from basically living, feeding themselves, I mean, that it speaks for itself, right? So people are impacted directly, and hence you see the reasons for people towing long lines in the heat, essentially begging for money from the government. And another reality is the government doesn't have the resources to address the situation adequately, and it affects people's quality of life. And you have a lot of people out there who sit in palaces of privilege and think that everybody is standing on equal footing. So the common man on the street is absolutely impacted. People trying to sell coconut, making count salad. I know barbers personally who haven't been able to cut hair. That's what they do for a living. And they're impacted. They have no income coming in.
Let me ask this: the Attorney General's role in all of this. Let me. Sorry, Damien. Go ahead.
The mental health aspect of keeping people confined ought to be something that concerns everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of the points which Dame Joan Sawyer was making on your show. And if you look at Article 17, which is not affected by Article 29, no person shall be subjected to torture or to inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Now, when you have cooped people up in their houses for months upon months, you are in fact treating them in a way that is contrary to Article 17.
Well, someone say, well, I gather based on what you're presenting here, it would depend on whose house, who's living in what house, right? Because a lot of people might not be thinking that they're being tortured. Others may be, but
what I'm saying is that the person who is sensitive to the fact that they are separated from society, that they are at home alone, they're being mistreated. They to the point where they can't even go outside after 7 o'clock in their own yard.
Let me ask this question because I have a few before our time is done. With the Attorney General, because the Attorney General has also been named in this suit, right? What is the role of the Attorney General in this suit? I mean, how is he being brought forth? Is it just common nature because you need to sue? You're suing the Prime Minister. We have to.
No.
That's it. No.
If the pleading said, and you notice we don't even put his name there.
No, you don't.
The Attorney General of the Commonwealth of
Yes.
Bahamas, pursuant to the Crown Proceedings Act, because we're saying that actions by Crown officers, by public officials, are to be questioned. We're raising issues of constitutionality, so the Attorney General must always be a party. And when we're seeking to charge and make the state liable, the Attorney General must also be a party. I should say that we're currently considering the Prime Minister is sued in his capacity as competent authority. We're currently considering whether there can be an action against him in his personal capacity, because he is the one having poor people locked up. He is the one having poor people dragged before the court because he purports to create criminal offenses. It might well be that we can see over the hurdle, and if he can be personally liable, then there's no reason that the public purse, into which all of us contribute, should pay for those aspects of it. But the Attorney General is sued specifically pursuant to the Crown Proceedings Act.
Someone asked Mrs. Black, has the attorneys been given a court date as yet?
No, this is a process, and we considered whether we should go by a notice of originating motion, which is more summary, or a writ process. We have to make 2 consequential amendments to this writ. Then once it is served, they have to enter an appearance. The Attorney General will have to consider whether his office treats with this or they hire private counsel. Then we will have to do the statement of claim, which will be very, very involved. Then they have to do their defense, where they put forward their justifications. Then we go to case management, and I anticipate that they may not want to give discovery of all of this material, that in my view, they will have to give discovery of. You know, all of this
sounds like a long process, Wayne. It sounds how
it's about a 4-month process.
Just to get a date?
Not just to get to case management.
My God, this is.
Well, put it this way.
We'll be over the pandemic hopefully by then.
I doubt that, because I see this letting the first date, the first state of emergency lapse, because they're trying to get a 6-month extension.
Yes, I thought so too.
The reality is this, and people must be quite clear about this. We're seeking substantial declarations and we will be seeking substantial damages. If you think that every person who has been arrested for, say, 2 days is entitled to probably about $20,000, $30,000, and there have been hundreds of those, this magnitude of a case does not happen overnight. The writ itself runs, the endorsement, which is usually 1 page, runs to 2 and a bit. I anticipate that the writ itself would likely run, you think, Damien, Khalil, to about 40, 50 pages?
Wow.
Minimum, because we have to set out how each regulation is ultra vires, how each order offends. So for instance, while we were on air, Dunkin' Donuts was open, now it's closed.
Yep.
We were told Wallace has an affinity to Acklands. I have an affinity to Ragged Island. Ragged Island was closed 8 days ago and Acklands was closed. It's now open. We have 900 cases, but it took 8 days for no cases for them to be open. In March, how long did it take for them to be open when we had fewer cases in fewer islands? So we have to look systematically at all of these things and set them out.
I have quite a few texts here, but I want to get to something before we lose track of time. Khalil Parker, president of the Bar Association, you're also, the Bar Association has stood on a point of order with regard to the judicial appointments and saying, and has called out the government in their use or their, what has been seen as pretty much as ignoring consultation by those necessary or required to be consulted with the appointments of justices within the judicial system. I wanted to get your thoughts on it because recently there was an article that was shared that went through social media. I also shared it as well, where it seems as if attorneys, the bar in particular, is of a position or of a feeling that, hey, listen, decency and order is not happening. And this is a problem. And many Bahamians don't understand what this means for the legal fraternity and for us as regular citizens. So I'd like to get your thoughts on those.
Well, it comes down to our national commitment to the rule of law. It is, in the instance of the Court of Appeal, it is a matter of constitutional expedience that whomever occupies the office of the Prime Minister is the driving force for the mechanical constitutional appointment process for justices of appeal. But it is our position, and it is not only our position, it is the position as expressed through the Commonwealth Latimer House principles, and it is accepted in modern liberal democracies that your judicial appointment process is to be open, it is to be meritocratic, it is to be transparent, to ensure that the constitutional promise of a trial before an impartial and fair tribunal is truly guaranteed. If you have a situation where there are closed door arrangements made, and as has been the case recently and previously, you wake up in the morning and somebody's on Mount Fitzwilliam smiling and swearing on the Bible to do justice to all manner of people, and we don't know how they got there, that is a problem. And so what we are seeking to do is to highlight that problem, underline that problem, and demonstrate to the government, demonstrate to the Prime Minister, demonstrate to the Chief Justice and the Judicial Legal Services Commission that thus far and no further, we will not let it go unremarked. You will not get to celebrate and go and have your nice lunch and everybody congratulate you and all these things carry on. We insist upon a transparent and meritocratic process. We insist on knowing where our judicial appointments come from and how they got where they got. It is absolutely unacceptable that you have judicial appointments coming out of the ether. And it is also unfair. Let's take an example. You have judicial service as public service. Anyone on this call who decides to seek judicial office would, and I don't think they would mind me saying this, be taking a substantial pay cut to go and give public service to their country. So those judges who do that at a young age and matriculate through the system They expect through their service and their good years that they would be considered at the very least. And you wake up and you are leapfrogged by individuals from the private sector, and you wake up, you are leapfrogged by persons who appear to be junior to you without explanation, without any sense of fair play. It raises questions. And the people of the Bahamas, the visitors to the Bahamas, deserve a judiciary that is beyond question, where we don't ask how people get where they get. There was an advertisement for a judicial post. The person presumably put in their application, were interviewed, and we understand that that was the process that was followed. It is unacceptable in 2020 that the government balks at being asked to ensure that judicial appointments are advertised. They advertise for the appointments to the highest court in our land, the Privy Council. Those positions are advertised. There is a process, and we can't seem to manage to get our act together. And we are sensitive when questions are asked about how things were done. You cannot be sensitive if you are not following what is reasonably and internationally accepted. These questions have to be, sorry.
No. Sorry, because I wanted to ask this: the process. What is the process? I think many people would like to know exactly what is that process. Is it just advertising? Is it a vetting? What is the process, and where is the breach simply that it just seems as if these appointments happened? There was no talking to anyone. There was no advertisement of the jobs.
Well,
what is that
is
process?
In the first instance, I mean, it is natural justice in its purest form. The process does begin with adverting to the fact that there is a desire to make an appointment. And one of the fundamental premises is that all of those who are eligible for a post should be open to seek that post. How can I seek a post that I do not know it is vacant? I do not know that you are looking to fill it. So that is the fundamental premise that says, okay, you are declaring that this post is open, and that the criteria is there, is laid out for you, and you go and you interview, and that there is a system whereby all aspirants to high judicial office have an equal and meritocratic chance of filling that particular post. And it means that it limits it. You cannot completely erase concerns of politics, because the way our constitutional settlement is, ultimately there is the involvement, in at least at the Court of Appeal level, of the Prime Minister in making recommendations, but his recommendations ought to be made on an informed basis. And what they have done in the UK, for example, they have an independent judicial appointments commission that vets people, that takes them through the process, and then you have shortlists and whatnot. But how we treat with this issue, it is up to us to a certain degree, but the status quo, and what you have here is you would have those who insist upon the status quo, suggesting that the constitutional minimum, which is for the Court of Appeal, for example, the Prime Minister makes a recommendation, there's consultation with the Leader of the Opposition. If the Leader of the Opposition does not agree, the matter is referred then back to the Prime Minister, who then makes an ultimate decision. Now that is a brief sketch of the minimum requirements. But what we are saying is that it cannot be right that the entire Court of Appeal is filled based exclusively on conversations between the Leader of the Opposition and the Prime Minister. What we are saying is that that is a constitutional requirement, because the democratically elected body populates both the executive and, by extension, in this instance, the judiciary. But we say that in order for them to determine who to select from, there ought to be a proper process. They ought to avert the fact that they are interested in filling a post.
That was Khalil Parker, because I think that's interesting. I've seen the documentation. I've seen the press statement recently released by the bar, and I think it's fascinating how we are finding ourselves, after the Prime Minister said what he said in the House with regard to perhaps one government one day may see the need to breach our constitutional rights. it just, I mean, I was floored by that statement in the House alone. I mean, who says that anywhere near the mic if you're a prime minister, but worse, you say it in the House of Assembly. I have a text here from a businessman, and he wants to ask this question. Good afternoon, Nahaja. A businessman here. Can a business file a petition for loss of business activity, and how can that amount be determined? Who would like to answer that question for me?
If you are able to show, if we are able to show that for instance, there's no state of emergency to ground this behavior, that the rags are ultra vires because they're made for public health purposes, and that's not permitted by Section 3. And that the orders are unconstitutional, and that infringes your right to associate. The right to associate would be to associate with your customers. Then it would be a matter of quantifying what you would have lost. Some of it might be speculative because, for instance, let's say you are a hotel. You would not be able to base your losses on past years because the circumstances are different. But if you could show what loss you would have made, so for instance, let's say you were closed down for 2 months, then you were open up, and you did business, you could assume that you would have done at least that amount of business in the period you were closed. Yes, that would be recovery that you would be seeking, taking that your right to associate was interfered with.
Well, now that knowing that it's a class action, can sorry, you wanted to add something real quickly, Damien?
Yes. Also, some business persons may be in a position to argue that they have suffered loss of property rights as a result of the regulations and the declaration of the state of emergency. If they're able to do that, then it doesn't really matter what the regulations say, because the Article 29 does not deal with Article 27 rights. So property rights are unaffected from a legal point of view by a declaration under Article 29.
When you say property rights, meaning what? The loss of property, the issuance of
money
okay.
is
It's considered property.
Considered property.
Fascinating. Okay, this is interesting. I think a lot of us, we will definitely be. Wallace, you wanted to add something?
I mean, and you know, Munroe mentioned how I really have an affinity to the islands, and the island of Auckland's where the government in its own data said that there was never any incident of COVID-19 there. What is the rationale then for closing a place like Auckland's where people have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars there? If there was no COVID, no state of emergency. I mean, we're an archipelago of islands. Even if one exists in Nassau, we can't put that on Auckland's. And there are people in Auckland's who have spent thousands and who have lost thousands of dollars. And I wish during this debate, we can really not be Nassau-centric and talk a lot about what's happening in the family islands. Most of those people are really suffering. They can't walk into national insurance. They don't go to the food banks that the Nassovians go to. So we have a real issue there, and I hope that somebody would continue to talk about what happens on the family islands.
Yeah, great point, Wallace. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. The attorneys that are pushing forward a constitutional challenge for their clients who have suffered long, a challenge to the competent authority, the Prime Minister, and also to the Attorney General, their office as well, on what have we breached? Has the government, has the competent authority breached the rights of the Bahamian citizens, like their constitutional rights? And I think it's going to be fascinating to watch. We'll look to see what comes of it. And based on the timeline, this might take a few months. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I gather that is not a stop at this point. It is in process, and it does not stop any action that is happening now. It doesn't stop us from being charged. It doesn't stop us from, being brought before the courts on any matter, because there's nothing being won yet. Am I correct on that? So I just want people to don't lose their mind and try to.
Yeah, nothing more.
Okay, so
I would tell you, for breach of the orders, you get bail immediately.
You do?
Because yes.
So this isn't one of those where I might lose my job.
This isn't one of those blackmail offenses where
That's
people plead guilty because they don't want to be remanded.
That's what I'm concerned about. Okay.
That's what we call it, a blackmail
But
offense.
we would get shamed in the press, though. We would get embarrassed in the press. You know, don't go for butter because you get embarrassed in the press.
What would be embarrassed about walking out of the side of your house?
My word. Or throwing out your garbage.
A very crazy thing crosses my mind is that let's assume the police still have this ridiculous view that you can arrest people for this, although it is a misdemeanor and not otherwise arrestable. If 100,000 Bahamians decide to offend these orders at the same time, where are they going to house 100,000 Bahamians? Do they have 100,000 policemen to arrest 100,000 people? If they turn out to be wrong, do they have the money to compensate 100,000 Bahamians? And the beauty of it is, while their COVID policies remain, you're not going to have a trial of the issue before you have a trial of this writ.
But a restaurant owner knows that, well, look, we want to open up our restaurant. It was in the news today that some restaurants may have gotten approval to be open to service frontline workers. That was news to me today. But
I think to feed people in custody.
Right. Okay. So there it is. And police officers, people in custody, and it seemed that there were other patrons in there. So I just thought it were all frontline workers. But a restaurant owner knows full well that they would like their business to be open, but I have staff that has to get here, and I may be fined. Right now, the responsible thing to do would be what?
Nahaja, let me ask you something. I saw all this pontification when John Lewis died, right?
Yep.
What was the history of what happened, what those people faced in the civil rights movement in the U.S.? Water cannons, police dogs,
horses. Yep.
So, I mean, at some point, we're going to have to consider how important it is to us
to fight for our constitutional rights. Very good point.
As Bjorn says, it's all well and good for people with millions of dollars in the bank to say that we have to sacrifice our livelihoods. They're not sacrificing their millions of dollars in the bank, by the way. We have to sacrifice our livelihoods to save a life. By the way, the law accepts that life has a value and a price. Even the law of tort does. You only have to do what is reasonable to guard against injury. So if the price gets too high, you do not have to do it. There are a number of cases that say this. So Bahamian people will have to determine at what point we stop letting people destroy our futures to protect a limited number of persons who could protect their own health by taking the very measures that they force on everyone. I think that's Dame Jones' point. Yeah. At the end of the day, if you are still afraid of contracting COVID, you can stay at home.
That's your choice.
Avoid people. Isn't it miraculously simple?
I think, listen, the power of choice. I'm concerned every day that we're becoming more and more of a police state. Bjorn, you'll get the final word real quickly so we can go to break.
It's interesting that you say that, because the whole approach, we just have to take the approach that the Bahamas can't be, this work that we have embarked upon is very serious, and it informs 54 Commonwealth countries as a result of what we do. You know, we're being told that the pandemics might be the way of the future, and what we do today, it will inform and assist future generations. That's how the law works. And so we're very serious about it, and we intend to do our best, obviously, and be successful.
You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Thanks again, gentlemen. You have definitely brought some legal framework the way the Dame had presented it, and you now presenting that legal framework to the courts, making it a tangible process. I think it's vitally important that we as citizens know our rights, that we understand that things can be done without infringing on it. That is what you call governments to do, to work within the confines of our rights as citizens to solve problems and not to infringe upon them because you have no ideas. And that in crisis. Crisis serves as a great opportunity for greatness or to take us back in time, for authoritarian measures or for the greatest democratic wins you can find. And my concern is that we're going backward with our dealing with this pandemic. So I thank you guys for motioning it forward, and we all hope that it is done as best and as greatly as we can to get the results that are right for the Bahamian people. When we come back, Shaunea Miller-Uibo will be joining us just to give us a different spin on today, man. I need some good news, y'all. We need to switch the tune. We need to switch the tune. So we're going to switch it. World champion, Olympic champion, Shaunea Miller-Uibo from Florida, one of the hot spots, eh? And she has the right to go and do track meets. Isn't that powerful? You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Special thanks again, Damien Gomez, QC, Bjorn Ferguson, attorney at law, Wayne Munroe, QC, Wallace, Rolle, attorney at law, and Khalil Parker, president of the Bar Association. We will be back right after this. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's the beginning of the hurricane season, and Fidelity Bank is giving you one less thing to worry about. We're not able to control a storm or its path, but we can prepare for it as much as possible. With every debt consolidation loan, Fidelity is giving away fully loaded hurricane kits valued at $200 with all the hurricane essentials you'll need to weather the unexpected storms of life. It's that easy. Sign up for a debt consolidation loan, open an ASUS savings or fixed deposit, and walk away with a free hurricane kit. At Fidelity, we're committed to helping you through these difficult times. Fidelity, we're good for you.
The new Guardian Radio app is here. Listen live to all our Guardian Radio shows and live video stream select programs in our studio. Get information about Guardian Radio shows and our hosts. Send messages, including text, email, and even call. All from our amazing new Guardian Radio app. Download it free today in your App Store for your Apple device or Play Store for your Android device. The all-new and improved Guardian Radio app.
COVID-19. Do not panic. Be prepared. Some persons may get worried and feel stressed whenever there's an outbreak of diseases like COVID-19. Do not panic. It is better to be informed and prepared. Talk to a healthcare professional about your concerns. Make a plan for how you will keep your home and workspace clean and disinfected. Practice proper hygiene and preventative actions such as proper hand washing and coughing and sneezing etiquette. Stay informed about local COVID-19 updates from trusted and reliable sources.
This message brought to you by Bahamas Ministry of Health in conjunction with Guardian Radio.
This is Guardian Radio, 96.9 FM, Nassau, Bahamas.
And we're back. You're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the world champion, still world leading, this young lady. I mean, look, if you can't be prouder of anybody, right, other than I am of my children, and they still got to come up, because I'm so proud of Shaunea Miller-Uibo, y'all, all the way from Florida. I mean, I make it sound so far. Are you in Florida now, Shaunea? I mean, but all the way.
I'm in Florida right now.
Home. How are you, darling? How are you?
I'm doing good. Can't complain. How have you been?
Well, you know what? Hey, a lot has happened since the last time we spoke and saw each other, but we won't discuss it on air. You know what I mean? It's good to see you. It is so good to see you. We're in an interesting time, man, and I needed some good news. I needed us to talk about something that'll all get us excited about, something that Bahamians are very proud about, and that's our world champion, one of the greatest athletes this world has ever seen. And very proud that she is a Bahamian, and you're always showing off on Instagram. Just can I say, you know, you and your hubby always looking super fit.
Oh gosh.
So tell us a bit. This season has been great for you so far, but it's been different, right?
Yeah, it's definitely been different. Since the pandemic, I think everything has just been in a loop, and we're just trying to stay focused and see how things turn out. But we were able and lucky enough to have a season this year. Not an ordinary season, but something close to it. And so we were still able to compete and put down some performances. And so, yeah, everything's been going well so far. And yeah, looking forward to the rest of it.
You know, what is different about this summer, we were supposed to be talking Olympics, right? We were supposed to be watching you, Shaunea, win your rightly your righteous gold medal, because you know I still got beef with the gold medal winner of the 400 race, and I know you can't talk about that. But for the record, audience, that gold medal winner of the 400, she is under investigation. And when she ran, I'm sorry, I got to tell my people, okay? Because now I understand why you and hubby was so happy just running around the track. Y'all knew the news. that track athlete, I think her last name is Vassar. Is it how do you pronounce that last name? Nasser. I was so not close. That Nasser though had missed three at that point, three tests, three drug tests, and was on the fourth, I think. At that point, she's missed four, and yet they still allowed her to run, which was quite suspicious. And I could only imagine how many times they test you, Shaunea. But she went out of there, ran a time like nobody had ever seen. I never even heard of the woman. And maybe that's just because I wasn't following. But she went ahead and beat you. So this Summer Olympics, you should see me like, this is it. I'm looking forward to my girl going out there, crushing like she always crushes. And boom, COVID-19. COVID-19. And I wondered, I had Stevie on some months ago via phone, and I asked him this question: how heartbreaking was it to know that there would be no Olympics this year?
No, it was very heartbreaking. When we first heard the news, I don't think anybody really knew how to handle it. We've been training so hard up to that moment, but obviously what was going on around us was way bigger than sports. And so it obviously was the right decision to make. But yeah, it was devastating for us athletes, being that we've already put in so much hard work into that process. But I mean, that I guess it's a part of the game. And so we're brushing it off, and we're just refocusing for next year, using the season as, I guess, a booster to work on a few things and be a little bit more prepared for next year.
When you try, you're running this year, right? So this season, I shared 2 of your races on my Facebook page because I stalk, right? Got to see what the athletes are doing. You look at it now, and the world has watched you, Shaunea, for years. Right. So you've been on the world's radar as an athlete, a track athlete, 4 years, and you've had a stellar career. You look at a season like this when, the Olympics is the penultimate for many, I think, of all, especially track and field athletes. This is our bragging rights. This is the Usain Bolt stage, where VCB stage, where we mark our name in, law. You've already won a gold medal in the 400. And I wondered, with that being the 400, and there's a question of the count dive, which we, Bahamas, we love it. Was there a part of you going into this season, knowing you're a favorite still? NASA don't count to me, and I don't care who hears that at this point. But going into it as his favorite, were you ready to go and say, "Hey, this is it. I own this stage. This is my stage this year"? How confident were you going into this Olympic season?
We were really confident going in. Obviously, it's the Olympics, and if you have a year to make sure everything is on top of his game, I think this is the year to make sure of it. But yeah, we were really prepared going in, and working on a lot of different things: speed, endurance, strength, and just trying to put everything together for that big showdown for the Olympics. And so, yeah, it's a little devastating that we have to wait a whole next year, but at the same time, it's also a blessing, I guess, in disguise, where we can work on a few other things that we probably would have missed out on this year.
One of the questions, or one of the things that I think about a lot with sports, Shaunea, is that it has been such a big boost for us as a small nation, right? We're biggity. We're back in the day, Lord knows I'm getting old. I would call us spouty, right? We have a lot of mouth, a lot of talk, right? And that's because we see ourselves as champions. We look at you. We look at Pauline, Tonique, and the Golden Girls, all of these, and our 4x4. We believe we are winners. We know this for a small nation. I'm curious as to your thought. How many Shauneas, how many Stevie Gardners do you believe the Bahamas has right now that's untapped?
Oh my gosh, I've been preaching that for the longest. We have the most talented set of people in the Bahamas, but I think it's just a matter of fact of reaching out to those and bringing those athletes into the sports and introducing them to it. I always say, there's unbelievable talent in the Family Islands. But we have to come together as one too, and be able to push those athletes forward as well, and give them something to look forward to, and just like push them out there for it. But yeah, we have so many talent.
Yeah. What do you say would be a plan? If Shaunea could put a plan together and hand it over to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, what would your plan look like? What would you say, listen, we can do this. Here's what I think we should do. And here's how I think we can get a lot of our young athletes into the forefront. What would you present?
I think one of the first things would be to start building a foundation, especially in the Family Islands. I mean, a lot of them don't even have a track to train on. And so I think that would be one of the first things that we'd have to work on, is trying to build a track stadium or something where athletes can train and get that opportunity to see which avenue. And it doesn't even have to be track and field, just any old sport that they can avenue in. But yeah, I think that's the first major step, is to actually show, hey, we care. Here's a track stadium for you guys to train at, bring athletes to the track, and see if we can build a foundation there.
One of the things I find interesting is that I liked the World Relays, right? I really did love the World Relays. I love the World Relays because it was our time to shine. And I think for many of us, it was the first time we saw our athletes perform. Like, the vast majority of Bahamians, I would say 99% of us, will not travel to see you guys race, right? And it is just because it's not in the budget, but we love sports. We love sports. For a little tiny place, we love sports. We won't go and fill up the stadium for the Popeye Bowl for football, college football, but we will definitely come for track and field. What I found was interesting, though, and I wonder if there's a money-making part of it. And I want to ask you, as a world-class athlete, you live in Florida, so you want to have that nice climate, but you want the opportunities that I guess come with training in a first world country. Let's call a spade, right? And I wonder, what would it take for Shaunea Miller-Uibo, her wonderfully talented and handsome husband, Mr. Uibo, and other great Bahamian athletes to come home and train? What would it take for us to get you to come home and train?
Yeah, it's a whole lot, the facilities and everything else. We have to, and that's one of the things I was talking about with building the country for sports, and yeah, I guess that would be one thing that would keep the athletes home. Because we have a lot of great coaches back at home, but we just don't have the facilities to host the athletes or anything along that line. And so I think that would be one of the first steps.
But you talk about facilities. What kind of facilities do you need? Because I'm still surprised that we don't have ice baths, like a bathroom just to throw ice in a tub.
Yeah, there's a few things. You need a nice proper track to train at. Sometimes the athletes have a hard time even getting access to the track stadiums. You need massage therapists, ice baths, yes, physiotherapists. There's just so much different things that come into play.
Is there good money in this? If we were to, because I look at it, we have this sports complex and it's not making money. It's a building, it's an area. And for me, it's a wasted investment if we're not using the facilities to be a seasonal space. You're in Florida because it's seasonal. You can train all the time.
Yeah.
Right. You won't go to a cold weather country because for 6 months you can't. Who wants to train in the snow unless you're Rocky, right?
Yeah.
The space that we have, can we monetize that space? Do you think that there's a market that would come to the Bahamas and train, and we can be on a seasonal money-making trip just on sports without even?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, first off, it's the Bahamas. Who wouldn't want to come to the Bahamas?
Hey.
And we have great weather. There's always people that are doing camps in different places. You have Europeans that come down to Spain. We have some Europeans that come down here to Florida to train, just to be able to catch some sun, to get some outdoor training. And so that would be one thing that they can definitely capitalize on.
Yeah. Shaunea Miller-Uibo, y'all, all the way from COVID-drenched Florida. So Shaunea, I'm making fun of the COVID-drenched, right? How are you guys keeping safe, though? How are you and your husband keeping safe? And what are the mitigation protocols when you go to these meets?
Yeah. So they're making sure that everyone, I guess, has not been in contact with anybody with COVID, obviously staying indoors or whatever. And so, yeah, there's a form that we usually have to fill out. We come with our mask, we social distance. And then on the track, when they're lining us up, we're a lane spaced in between each athlete. So it's pretty much just 4 people competing at a time. And so that's the next thing that's a little bit different. But yeah, there's definitely some protocols that they're putting in place now. So it makes it a little bit different.
Yeah, it does seem different, eh? I was watching one of your races and they're so quiet. I'm used to noise, eh? How does it feel to be running it at meets without fans and without that crowd noise when you make the finish?
That's been one of the things. It's been feeling a lot like practice, I guess you can say. Being that being that we don't get to compete in the front of a large crowd, and so yeah, it's definitely been different, but I guess we're adjusting.
Yeah, and does it affect how you? I mean, because you're still world leading. I was watching your race, and I think it was well, both races you won in this most recent post. And if you don't mind, forgive me, I forget the meet that you ran in where you just won both of your races. What was the name of that?
Probably Claremont.
Yes. Yeah. And it was the 200 you ran, and what was the other race?
The 100.
So you're sprinting and winning now? I mean, what's going on, man? I mean, I know about the 2 and the 4.
Testing the waters.
Well, I know for sure I saw in the 2, they have you with the world leading time, and you won your one. Okay, so I know it looked, because to me, I said this looks like a short race. Maybe I missed half of the race, but you know. What is it like? You're still leading in the world in this time, and for your 200 meters, and you're winning your 100-meter races. What's going on here? What am I missing here? Because do we need to like make a makeshift Olympic race? Are we running the 100 in the Olympics? What's going on?
We actually don't know about the 100, but I as you know, we've asked for the schedule to be changed.
Yes.
For the 2 400 double, and we were basically told no. And I guess in the nicest way they tried to, but yeah,
they would have done it for Usain though. I mean, for God's sake, you're the world champion. Well, you know, cheated out of your world title.
Yeah, I guess the sad part is we've asked from so long ago. I think we first asked after the Olympics last year for them to clear the schedule, and yeah, the schedule is just ridiculous. And so, you know, we asked again last year and they told us no again. And so, yeah, we had to make a choice. And me and my coach, we sat down and we decided, since we have the 400-meter title already, that we would go down for the 200 and try and get a new title.
Yeah, now you're world leading, eh?
World lead.
Yeah, always. But you're not, that's not new for you, right? That's not new. Let me ask this final question before we go. Is it different when you are, is there a different level of pressure the more magnitude is on the event? Because, you know, someone say, well, listen, man, Shaunea kills it all season. And then, you know, she gets to the Olympics and it looks like you get tired, or you look like you get, worn to the end, which I'm like, y'all don't understand. These people on different level speed at this point, right? This is like the big finale.
Yeah.
How do you approach a race when it becomes a bigger stage?
For the last few years, as far as I can remember, I've actually ran my fastest at the championship. And that's when you want to run your fastest at a championship, and everyone expects that. And so, yeah, that's the big dance. You know, throughout the season, it's just getting a feel of different things. But when you come to the championships, that's the big dance. That's the one that you're really focused on. And so, yeah, you're expecting everyone to bring their A game, and you bring your A game, and then we just go at it and see who comes out on top.
Man, listen, I've watched every race I can remember from when you shocked the hell out of, sorry, did I say hell on the radio? From when you shocked the heck out of me in the World Juniors, and you beat out one of our Bahamian stars in that time, our young Bahamian stars, and made it to the finals. And I think you placed somewhere in the top 4 or 5.
2013.
Yeah. And I was like, who is this young woman, right? And you've never slowed down. Literally, you haven't slowed down since. And man, you were the rising star for sure. But anyways, Shaunea Miller-Uibo, thank you so much. And I hope we get to do this again.
Yes, definitely.
All right, you're listening to The Hit Back with Nahaja Black. Shaunea Miller-Uibo here, live with us. Take care, darling. It's good to chat with you.
I love you.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye.